History happened everywhere.
The verdict.
This is our after-show podcast where we look back at the most recent episode 102, First Aid in Sudan, during 1970 to 1980. So if you haven't listened to that, go back, check it out, or else you're going to find spoilers ahead. What are you doing? You're making so much noise.
Oh, sorry. That was me.
What are you doing?
I was buffing my stool.
Okay. Hello, my name is Ryan Weir, and I'm here in the HHE studio with a band-aid to my weeping wound. It's Mr. Peter Goddard.
I am like a band-aid because it really hurts if you rip me off.
Which I tend to do quite frequently. Give me your money. And we are joined as ever by the dreaded dracunculus of discussion. It's the judge himself. It's Mr. Paul Dursley.
Could you please explain dracunculus to me?
It's the scientific name for the horrible parasitic worm that infects people in the Sudan.
Ah, yes.
He's kind of like the parasite of podcasts, isn't he? He's in there in the background, sticks his head out occasionally.
It's very painful.
And we like to wind him up. I was wondering if anybody's ever intentionally got Guinea Worm just to see what it feels like.
Probably, I should think.
That seems incredibly unlikely to me.
Yeah, I think so too. I suspect there's probably an influencer out there somewhere that would do it for the gram. Probably.
Everyone vote for your favourite influencer that you'd like to see infected with a Guinea Worm.
Mr. Beast! Mr. Beast! Now, Peter, last episode's sketches had me in stitches. Literally, I split my sides laughing and I had to spend the rest of the week patching myself up. But with all that going on, I completely forgot everything else that we talked about on the show. So would you mind giving me a quick refresher on what happened in, let's say, 60 seconds?
I can do that. When would you like me to do it, though?
Well, I would like you to do it now.
We sought out first aid in the region and the country of Sudan, the nation whose people have endured decades of civil war but still managed to retain a sense of kindness and grace. We discovered pyramids that are pointier than their more famous Egyptian cousins, and we learned thousands of years of history, including the Black Pharaohs and their hard-rocking modern counterparts. We also discovered, much to our regret, the parasitic Guinea Worm, whose hideous manifestation in the legs of unsuspecting humans led ex-President Jimmy Carter to lead a war against the nasty beasties, which he all but won in his lifetime. And we met nurse and humanitarian Roberta Gately, who headed off to Sudan to help for herself and kindly shared some of the stories from her time on the ground in a camp for displaced persons. And finally, we learned a little bit of first aid history from a German Surgeon General to the first first aid kit from Johnson & Johnson. It was first aid, it was 1995 to 2000, it was Sudan.
That was last week's episode done, summarised nicely. Nice one, son. Now we're over to a young Dursley who's gonna tell you what he thought of thee. He'll take you apart without any care. He's the lovely Paul Dursley. The lovely Paul Dursley. Ah, yes. I remember now.
It's all coming back, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, what an episode it was, Pete. But what does it matter what I think, because we're here for the opinion of just one man, Judge Dursley. So, Paul, before we convene the court and receive your final ruling, why don't you kick us off with your first impressions of episode 102?
Have you ever been to Sudan?
Funnily enough, no, I haven't.
No, Sudan hasn't really been open to visitors for some time on a sort of tourist sensibility, has it?
What was remarkable to me, Pete, was you saying that it was 3 times the size of France.
Yeah, and that's it in its diminished size. It was lost a few kilometres squared from its area with the loss of South Sudan. It was the biggest country in Africa and it came down to 3rd place with the departure of the South.
In my mind, when we talk about humanitarian effort, if France was in need, you'd think, well, how on earth are you going to be able to look after the people of France, let alone a country 3 times as big?
Well, you've got to look at it in terms of population as well as size. So population of France is larger than the population of Sudan.
Well, this is true, but that's actually given me quite a good segue into one of the things I wanted to mention, because actually I was reading a bit more generally about the challenges of providing aid. And I found a story from an organisation called One Vision, which featured one of its staff who works in delivering aid to suffering and remote locations. So one of the aid workers is called Bernard Nyataya, and he delivers food in some of the most dangerous places in Sudan. He describes one of these experiences. He said, "We got to distribute food in Nasser County. We woke up in the early morning hours to an armed attack in the community. The sound of rapid gunfire, explosions at close range, counter-attacks, women and children crying, domestic animals running for dear life. Our team was caught in the midst of the chaos." But if that wasn't enough, he also describes the challenges they face with the wildlife. He says wild animals stray into the team's campsite hunting for livestock, even lions marauding at night. And then he talks about delivering food by river, because obviously you can't necessarily just drive to these places. And his description is a masterclass of keeping the very key information to the end. He says, "The river deliveries are complicated during the rainy season as most areas are flooded with no safe place for offloading the commodities. The makeshift distribution pads have to be created out of water lilies and plastic sheets. The river is also infested with crocodiles."
Yeah, I was waiting for something.
So Bernard is part of a rapid response team. It's a unit that deploys within 72 hours, apparently, in hard-to-reach areas where other people are not willing to go. So, yeah, there's the problem of distance, there's a problem of the landscape, and also the problem of just the chaos and the fighting and the risk that's involved. And yet people still do it. So you've got to take your hat off to those guys, right?
Like, I would love to think of myself as someone brave enough to be able to do something as extraordinary as that. But lions and crocodiles and armed fighters, yeah, no, I'm good, thanks.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, a scenario where the crocodiles are a PS at the end, it's a risky area to be in.
You're just ending up as the Deliveroo service for crocodiles.
Yeah. Can you deliver me Deliveroo? Oh, what do you want them to bring? Oh, just the guy.
And make it snappy.
Hey!
All right, so Guinea worm.
Guinea worm.
It's pretty horrific, isn't it? I
Really
mean,
gross.
And you might have seen the rod of Asclepius.
Not
Yes.
only have I seen the rod, I'm willing to talk about it later.
Ah, very good. Okay, so this is the staff that is entwined with a single serpent. It's an ancient Greek symbol. Most people commonly associate it today with medicine. In America in particular, it's the logo that's on display in hospitals and on medical uniforms. The snake wrapped around a rod has a striking resemblance to a guinea worm wrapped around a stick. So they think that this may well go right back to early extractions of a guinea worm.
That's really interesting.
It is kind of interesting to consider that modern medicine today is based around the extraction of the guinea worm. Now, Pete, you said the coming together of people to fight the worm was an amazing thing.
Yes.
But actually, that's not quite true, because not everyone sees the worm as evil. There are some West African tribes that see the worm as something spiritual. They believe that the worm actually helps fight evil spirits that are affecting the body. Basically, that the worm is a blessing, helping those who survive it coming out of them as being spiritually purified.
Tribe must be one of the places in the world that hates Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, exactly. One of the few places. Now, I also mentioned in the episode that the work done by the Carter Centre had nearly eradicated the guinea worm. And that's kind of true, because while the guinea worm is close to being eradicated, there is a recent discovery of guinea worm in dogs. Now, researchers have discovered that this is likely because the dogs have been eating fish guts that have been thrown away. And the fish guts, of course, have the guinea worm larvae. Now, this is a jump in species, which is really scaring researchers because it's complicating efforts to try and get rid of them, right? But the Carter Centre isn't giving up. To track the spread of this new canine version of the guinea worm, they're fitting dogs with tracking collars with GPS in, and they're following their movements so they can see which watering holes they're drinking from, so that they can then go and put filters around those. But it is giving them this heat map of hotspot areas where the larvae is now being ingested. But having jumped species from humans to dogs, the guinea worm has now also been reported in baboons too. So possibility exists that the efforts to eradicate the worm from humans has now caused another unintended problem where the worm is now finding its way into the bodies of many more species.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because you never hear of it going that way. You always hear like of bird flu or HIV, isn't it? That comes from animals to humans. But this seems to have gone the other way.
You know, I don't want to coin a phrase, but life finds a way.
Well, it's that's evolution, isn't it? That's what it is. It's found a niche that it's able to evolve in.
If evolution existed, I'd agree with you.
Excellent. We've turned into that podcast, have we? Flat Earthers next.
But look, talking of dogs though, in 2010, the Carter Centre trained a German Shepherd called Kofi, after Kofi Annan, to help sniff out guinea worm in people and water samples, and he had a 92% rate of accuracy.
Nice.
Isn't that incredible? But Kofi had to retire just after 1 year though, because apparently his trainer said he was getting too stressed out because poor old Kofi was afraid of frogs. That's sweet.
Kofi.
Yeah,
retired
poor old
on an
Kofi.
ill health pension due to his frogophobia.
So an enormous 6 foot long Alsatian being afraid of a little frog.
I don't like frogs either. They're weird.
Yeah, I'm afraid of spiders, so I cannot judge if it's a question of size.
So there you go. Look, I would suggest that if the guinea worm were to be eradicated, that perhaps isn't a bad thing. But I think the message from this is you never can tell what the unintended consequences of such an action can be.
Well,
Exactly.
similarly, are we clear on the rest of the life cycle of the guinea worm? What's been eating it in the rivers that's not us? Countless stories of unexpected consequences from demolishing an entire species. That said, if there were a candidate to take the chance on, I'd probably vote for the guinea worm.
Yeah. Sorry, guinea worm. Get out of here.
Now, Ryan, you mentioned the rod of Asclepius.
I said Asclepius, but I'll accept Asclepius.
I would say Asclepius because that's what I learned when I was looking up this thing, because I came to the same topic through a different route.
Go for it.
Now, a piece that was, I believe, cut from the episode was I talked about the symbol for first aid, and I claimed that the symbol for first aid was a green cross, and you disagreed with me because you said you'd seen crescents, for example, in use for the same purpose.
In the Middle East, yeah.
Absolutely, and I did a bit more digging, and I think there's a case to say that we're actually both right.
Of course.
So the ISO standard, that's the International Organization for Standardization standard.
Yeah.
Their standard
I
symbol
thought it was a red diamond.
well, no, the
don't you
ISO
start.
standard symbol for first aid is the green cross.
Okay.
So to that extent, it is the official symbol.
But what about colourblind people?
Yeah, how can they see that it's green?
I'm red colourblind. How do I know the difference between a green cross and a red cross?
I'm not the ISO, guys. You've got to take this up with the authorities.
I think it should just be an exclamation mark.
Look.
Like, ow!
Ouch.
Yeah.
I thought the neutral one was the red diamond.
Right, everyone quiet, because there are a bunch of different symbols. Paul has put his finger on one. The crescent is one you mentioned, found
Yeah.
often in Islamic countries.
Yeah.
The red cross is also used as well as the green cross.
Yeah.
But in countries where religion can be divisive, the cross and the crescent have a bit of baggage, right? So they use what they call the crystal, which is a diamond or a square balanced on one corner. So
Sounds a bit woo, doesn't it? The healing crystal.
the healing crystal, yes, exactly. But this is quite a practical one. St. John's Ambulance, they
I
use
mean,
the
you'd be
Maltese
annoyed if
cross.
you opened up a first aid kit and it was just like a bunch of crystals in there, right? It's a
Yes,
quartz
I'm going to
amorous.
put, so you go wandering up to the ambulance and they say, I'm going to put some amber on this. You're going to feel the healing vibes. I'm bleeding out.
Well, if they're diamonds, you could go and sell them.
Yeah, no, you could. That's true.
Buy
I wouldn't
some
mind that.
actual medicine.
Yeah.
So anyway, St. John's Ambulance, they use the Maltese cross. In the US, they've got a couple, and this is what you mentioned, the snake wrapped around the staff, known as the Asclepius, and the Caduceus, which is associated with the Greek god Hermes, and presumably he's
It's
also...
nothing to do with medicine, it's an error.
Well, you tell them, Paul. You go and tell them. Write a stern letter. But yes, that's all of these are various symbols that are in use, regardless of what the ISO might have to say about it.
Yeah, I can imagine the people at ISO must be questioning whether or not they're actually doing a good job.
They're thinking, I don't think this is standardizing at all. If anything, it's getting worse. But apparently these are often coloured green because one site I saw, which is slightly dubious, said green is the colour for safety, which is why exit signs are also generally green.
Okay.
But I did also read that was down to somebody called Jess W. Park, whose research in the 50s showed the colour green was more visible in low light conditions and from longer distances. But that is a rabbit hole for another day.
Yeah.
I thought it was black text on yellow background myself, but
But you're colourblind, so you don't count.
it doesn't matter in that case.
I think it's unfair that you're colourblind. You can just go through traffic lights willy-nilly.
You do what you want.
Yeah.
It's unfair. I'm discriminated against all of the time. It's a hidden disability.
I don't know. I've seen you go to work in various costumes that make me think it's not as hidden as you think.
That was when I used to wear ties.
So anyway, ISO, buck up. Get your ideas
come
together.
on.
You are not achieving your goals.
Exactly. What would you have as the symbol if you had to standardise it?
Well, I have to say, the thing I'll go the other way and say the one I like least is the American symbols, because the cross, the crescent, the square, they're all really simple. And then suddenly there's an elaborate drawing that you have to pull together to put on the front of your first aid kit, which seems excessive to me. So I think I'd keep it really simple. So probably just a circle.
Yeah.
Maybe a donut.
I think I'd just have like a series of wounds for what you might want to use it for.
Yeah, maybe.
So like images of
people
various things that you could cure by opening up the first aid kit. Bone sticking out your arm, burn mark, eye hanging out.
An eye hanging out.
It's like those slippery floor posters.
Yes, exactly, like a slippery floor poster. The guy slipping over. Whoa, I'd have that. So, talking of first aid, in your section on the history of first aid from the episode, you talked about the first commercially available first aid kit, right?
Yes, developed by Mr. Johnson of Johnson & Johnson.
Yes, that's right. And they made a kit. I was curious about, what actually was the contents of this kit, because, it might have been a little bit different to what it is today. And
Jar of leeches.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was disappointed to learn that it was pretty much the same. So, like rudimentary band-aids were in there.
It would be the same, because that's the whole point. It's first aid, the first aid that you can give. You can't sort of give a defibrillator as first aid.
Well, I was curious to see whether or not there was any changes. So band-aids, bandages, antiseptic, cotton, tweezers, scissors. Those were the things that were in the kit. So, very similar to today, with one difference. And that is the addition of heroin as a painkiller included in that first aid kit. We don't get that in our first aid kits today.
No.
Heroin's a trade name. It's a trade name, isn't it? Trademark.
Yeah, I can only imagine that the people in marketing at Johnson & Johnson First Aid Products Inc. are begging to add the heroin.
Get it back in there.
Sales would really take off if we just pop the heroin back.
Yeah. So I've created an HHE first aid kit containing things that have been used throughout the ages to help respond to injuries. So first up in our kit is, obviously, onion soup.
Oh.
So apparently, if a Viking warrior had been slashed in the stomach or stabbed or whatever, the Viking healers would feed him onion soup, and then they would smell the stomach, and if they could smell onion soup, they knew that it was leaking out through his guts, and so that he was going to die.
Oh. What? Why are you sniffing my stomach, Ryan?
Yeah. Yeah. Right, next on the list, a dead mouse.
Okay.
Sounds perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, so the ancient Egyptians, they mashed up dead mice and they rubbed them in wounds and on decaying teeth.
Yeah, I guess all it takes is somebody sometime with a desperate toothache who happens to apply dead mouse just as something else happens to happen that causes it to clear up, like the tooth falls out or something.
And there you go.
Well, that dead mouse worked a treat. I'll tell everyone.
Or the penicillin bacteria may have started developing on the mice.
Yeah, exactly.
Very true.
Then they say, right, everyone, mouse is it.
Okay, so next up in our kit is courtesy of the ancient Greeks, and it's spiders' webs.
Oh, yeah. Well, this makes sense to me.
Webs contain natural antifungal and antibacterial properties, apparently, and they helped actually clot the blood.
I like the sound of it. I like the science of it. Then if someone then approached me with a handful of web when I want to shove this in your wound, I think I'd struggle.
You know how difficult cling film is to apply. Just think how much worse it would be for spiders' webs.
Yeah. Right, next up is sheep dung.
This sounds very unhealthy.
Yeah, so the Romans, they mixed the ashes of sheep dung and then mixed that with vinegar and then shove it up the nostrils of people who were suffering from nosebleeds.
I mean, they certainly improved matters insofar as they had something more to worry about than just a nosebleed.
Burnt dung is just burn anything, so it's just ashes.
Gross though, right?
Not ideal.
No. Fourth is urine. used to clean the wounds of soldiers that fought in the Napoleonic Wars and World War I. Apparently, medics used to urinate on bandages when there was no clean water or antiseptics were available.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I always used to say, they say wash your hands after having a wee, and you sort of think, well, historically, it's actually an antiseptic. They use it. They used to use it to clean clothes.
Is it when it's just come out, like when it's fresh, that it's good?
No. It's when it's left, when it really stinks. Yes,
That's when it's good for you.
yeah. That's also the origin of the phrase "taking the piss."
Oh, really?
Because what it used to be is, for the fulling industry up in the northeast, they used to bring coal down to London, and the empty boats, they used to take urine back for the
Ew.
fulling, cleaning the cloths. And so it was called taking the piss.
Wow.
I'd suggest that you were making fun in some way, but I can't think of how to express it.
Right, and finally in our kit is whale vomit.
Okay.
How
Ambergris.
does one
Ambergris, yes.
obtain? Oh, ambergris.
Ambergris.
Okay.
So, yeah, this is a rare substance found in a sperm whale's digestive tract, and it's believed to cure headaches, colds, and epilepsy.
Also used for making perfume.
Exactly. Right, so I'm going to run through the kit, and you give me a yes or no as to whether or not it's going in our new HHE branded kit. All right?
Okay.
Onion soup,
Yes.
No.
dead mice,
No.
Yes.
spider's webs,
Oh, yeah, I need that.
Oh, yes.
okay, ashes of sheep dung,
Could do without that.
No.
urine,
I've got to have urine.
Of course.
and whale vomit.
Yes.
I'm going to say yes to the whale vomit.
Yeah.
And again, if we could have the heroin, that would be terrific.
Oh, there you go, that's all. Buy your HHE first aid kit today.
It's packed with hard drugs.
Yes.
Papaya?
What?
Papa don't preach?
Sorry, packed with addictive substances.
Yeah. First aid kit is free.
All right, so look, guys, I have a bit of a mea culpa.
Oh.
But this is to do with one of our sketches, so I don't know if it counts. Paul, you will have to be the judge on this because you are indeed the judge. So in one of our sketches, I mentioned the Sudanese marathon runner, Ububaka Kaki.
You did?
Yeah, he's the guy who ran the Egyptian marathon barefoot. Although it turns out he didn't run the Egyptian marathon barefoot. I got the wrong guy.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the guy who actually ran the Egyptian marathon barefoot was an Ethiopian-born runner called Abebi Bikilia.
Oh.
Yeah, and who, fun fact, also won an Olympic gold medal for running barefoot too, but not Sudanese. But while researching him, I did discover another Sudanese athlete. Some people may have heard of him. His name is Manute Bol. Heard of him?
No.
He's 7 feet 7 inches tall. That's
That almost feels like cheating.
231 centimetres tall. He's one of the tallest players to have ever played in the NBA, the National Basketball Association in America. Doctors believed he actually could have reached 8 feet tall if his growth plates hadn't been stunted by childhood malnutrition.
Oh, my Lord. This is a man who hasn't reached his potential even. Good Lord.
Now, before being discovered, he'd never even heard of basketball. He was just a cattle herder in Sudan and a member of the Dinka people.
Well, the Dinka people are famously tall, one of the tallest people in the world.
So he was scouted and brought to America, and of course he didn't speak any English, and nobody of course spoke Dinka, and so they communicated only using hand signals. He's the only NBA player to record more career blocks, 2,086, than points, 1,599. He once blocked 4 shots in a single possession.
No idea what you're talking about.
That's a record that is likely never to be broken. He has hit 6 3-pointers in a single game.
He just has to reach out and drop the ball in the net, doesn't he?
Overall, he earned over $6 million in the NBA,
What's that in goats?
but he gave it all away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, nearly all of it. He personally funded schools, medical care, food programs in Sudan, even while he struggled to the point where he had to sleep in the back of his car.
Crikey.
When asked why he gave away so much money, Bol said that God guided me to America and gave me the opportunity to help my people. If I kept my money for myself, I would be selfish.
What a guy.
Yeah, at one point, he was so broke that he took part in a celebrity boxing match against a football player, an American football player called William Refrigerator Perry,
I remember
to
him.
make money. Yeah.
Crumbs.
Yeah, it was frowned upon, to say the least.
Yes.
Because he had no fighting skills.
You're in sideshow freak territory there, aren't you?
Yeah. Anyway, despite struggling financially, he returned to Sudan to help negotiate peace during the civil war, and he personally spoke to government officials and rebel leaders to help stop child soldiers from being recruited. And there are rumours that suggest that he was recruited by the CIA to help counter Sudanese government forces. He reportedly used his money to help fund rebel groups fighting against the Sudanese regime, and that, it is claimed, is why the US cut off his visa when he was no longer useful. His son, Bol, he is also an NBA player. He stands at 7 feet 2 inches tall, so slightly less than his dad. And in 2010, Manute Bol passed away due to a rare skin disease that he contracted while in Sudan. But even on his deathbed, guys, he reportedly talked about the suffering of his people and how he wished he could have done more.
Wow, what a guy.
What a guy, what a life.
He used his opportunity for good, didn't he?
Yeah, for sure.
Don't think I'd have done that. I'd have driven around in a fancy car.
Indeed. He was caught by the police once for speeding, and when they pulled him over, he opened the door, and of course his knees were up in front of the steering wheel, and they actually thought that he was sat on the back seat. Anyway, Manute Bol, we salute you.
We salute you.
And so we have come to the end of the line. It's time for us to step into the dockpeat and prepare to face the people's judge. Judge Dursley, are you ready to give your verdict?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Then will the defendants please rise?
Absolutely.
Your Honour, as usual, may we start proceedings by first asking for your verdict on factual content.
I think you pulled a good one this time. You had some interesting facts, some rather gory facts, but I think sort of highlighting these issues is a very good thing. Okay, most of your inaccuracies were in your sketches, so we'll have to think about the entertainment value for that. So yes, I'm pretty positive on this. I'm ready to give you a score.
Okay, well then may I ask for your verdict on factual content?
I shall give you B-.
Okay, that's good.
Happy with that.
Yeah, that's good. Then, Your Honour, may we ask for your verdict on entertainment value?
Well, this was going to be good as well, but I think I'm going to have to dock you a few marks.
Well, then, may we ask for your verdict on entertainment value?
C+.
Better than a guinea worm in the leg?
Just about.
Oh, Your Honour, may we ask for your verdict now on Dursley Factor?
Yes, it's I think a difficult one this time because, as you said, it was any episode that has to have a trigger warning at the start. Although, of course, I quite often think if trigger warnings are deliberately there to make people watch it.
Well, don't worry about that for our podcast.
Yeah, you have said in the past that you love an interview. And we did have an interview with Roberta Gately
the mighty
time.
Roberta.
Okay, I think I've got a score. Yes, I have.
Okay, what is your grade for Dursley Factor?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to give you a C.
And so we have reached the final verdict, but before the judge passes his ruling, Peter, we have an opportunity now to enter a plea. And if we choose to do so, we should make that plea now.
Well, not so much a plea as a thank you to Roberta Gately, who gave us her time and the benefit of her experience and gave us some great stories from on the ground in Sudan, which when we get primary sources like that, it's always something a little bit special. So I guess I'd say, Paul, we had something a little bit special there, and I hope the score reflects that.
Yeah, have you checked to see whether she's still got a job?
Yeah, Ministry of Health's hunted her down.
Well, no, I mean, sort of the American aid budget and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
They've all been stood down, haven't they?
I deliberately didn't mention any of that. I was like, that's going to be likely a very sore point.
Well, look, Your Honour, the defendants stand before you. Have you reached a verdict?
Yes, I have, and I think Pete's pointing out about the first-hand stories of Roberta Gately certainly do weigh very much to the positive. So this may seem strange given the scores for the other ones, but I am going to give you a straight B.
Nice. Doesn't seem strange at all. Definitely don't question it.
No, I'm really pleased with that, Pete. That's great news.
Me too.
Yay!
Thanks, Roberta.
Thanks, Roberta. Okay, well, look, there you go. That is the show for this week. So if you'd like to get in touch about any of the things that we've talked about on the show, or just to say hello, you can reach out to us on social media or through our website at hhepodcast.com or by email at peteandryan@hhepodcast.com.
That's right. We love it when you get in touch, and you never know, you may be featured on a future show.
Yeah, and one way to definitely feature on a future episode is to rate and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Your recommendation there goes a long way to bring the show to new listeners.
And if you follow or subscribe to us on social media, Twitter, X, Mastodon, join us and you will get a notification every time we get any extra content, like some of the pictures from Sudan, for example.
That's right, and we'll be back again soon with our next episode, episode 103, Water in Abu Dhabi during the 1970s. But in the meantime, a huge thank you to the judge himself. Thank you, Paul.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And a big thanks to Roberta Gately.
Thanks, Roberta.
And that's it. I guess all that's left to say is...
You've been listening to... Let's talk about pyramids.
I love a pyramid, me.
So I had a little bit more about pyramids, and it was the Nubian pyramid or the Sudanese pyramid. They are, as we discussed, more plentiful than the Egyptian pyramid, but a lot less famous. They're pointier, but also there's some other things that will help you distinguish them. So the pyramids in Egypt have their burial chambers inside the body of the pyramid itself, but they don't do that in Nubian pyramids. They have the burial chamber in the ground underneath the pyramid, actually. So the pyramid's just a kind of roof, if you like. The other thing that I found slightly disappointing about the Nubian pyramids is the outer layers are blocks of stone. The middle is just filled with rubble and dirt.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Suppose you've got to put it somewhere.
I guess, yeah. The steep slopes are useful because they use a thing called a shadoof in building the pyramids. And a shadoof is a wooden crane, which is just essentially a lever, which a bunch of people stand on the ground pulling ropes to operate the lever to pull the stones up the side of the pyramid.
Used to be used in irrigation as well, a shadoof.
Oh, is that right?
And it was said it comes from the sound of the bucket falling in the water, shadoof. They lift it up again and drop it down again.
I like that. So the reason I bring those two facts together is because one of the pyramids apparently they found had on the inside not just dirt and rubble, but also the remains of a shadoof. So it seems to me like the builders are just chucking their rubbish on the inside of the pyramid before then sort of making the outsides look nice and going, there you go, Governor, good as new.
Sounds like a sketch.
I've had a builder that's worked similarly for me.
So the actual tomb is at the bottom of a staircase underneath the pyramid itself. It's usually got two decorated chambers, but they've never found a body in a Sudanese pyramid. They have found items, though, that suggest there were bodies, including surgical tools and canopic jars. You know those jars? That
where you contain guts and brains and hearts and all that.
Exactly. Well, not the brain, but other bits, the viscera of the people. So that's what makes them think there were bodies, but they've never found a body in a Sudanese pyramid.
So they know how they made these pyramids, but we don't know how the Egyptians made their pyramids.
I believe we're fairly confident about how the Egyptians made their pyramid, but
They used a ramp.
I don't think they did. I think you know how they were
it's
made.
literally impossible for anything other than an alien civilization.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Yes, Ryan. Bye. Hello, lovely YouTube folks. This is a special message just for you.
Yeah, thanks for listening all the way to the end.
Now, if you enjoyed the show, please let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
And don't forget to take a moment to hit that like and smash subscribe.
Hit that like.
Yeah.
Smash subscribe.
Yeah, that's what people say.
Do they, though?
Yeah, only the cool kids.
And you think you're the cool kids, do you?
No, we're the cool kids.
Oh, yeah, I suppose we are. All right, smash that like button, people. Smash it real good.
Oh, yeah. Nice.